Thank you, Madam Speaker. Finally, after years of pleading with this Liberal government, the Liberals are trying to do something about bail and sentencing in Canada. If the Liberals admit there's a problem, you know there's a problem. The problem is crime and chaos on our streets. Violent criminals, gang violence, guns, auto thefts are terrorizing Canadians. And like many Torontonians, I get up in the morning and I actually wonder if I'm going to see my car, which is why I had to buy one of those big clubs to lock my wheel. We used to see those in the movies only, but not anymore. And that's after my insurance company told me that unless I install a tracking device at their expense, that my insurance rate is going to go up. So how is this possible that the Liberals cannot stop this, that criminals know that they can get away by stealing a Jeep, taking it to the Port of Montreal, and the very same night it's going to be on its way to the Middle East? You know, my provincial counterpart, the Solicitor General of Ontario, had his car stolen. The Solicitor General had his car stolen. And you know, Speaker, I love our country very much. And I remember what life was like before the 2015 Liberal government. We need two timelines, like BC and AD, before Liberals, BL, and after Liberals, AL. I remember the times before the Liberals. Canada was one of the safest countries in the world. And I often talk about my first love. My first love is the city of Toronto. In the time before Liberals, I felt safe walking anywhere in the city of Toronto, any street, any time, day or night. Safety and the feeling of safety add so much to our quality of life. But after a decade of Liberals, I don't feel safe in multiple neighborhoods in the city of Toronto anymore after dark, even in some of the safest neighborhoods. North York in North Toronto is being terrorized by gang violence, gun crime, and drug-related shootings almost daily, all done by criminals and all done with illegal guns. The Justice Committee heard from OPP Commissioner this week that almost all gun violence is perpetuated by criminals with illegal guns, not legal guns, which this government seeks to confiscate from law-abiding citizens. Now, how did we go from being one of the safest countries in the world? How did Toronto, one of the safest metropolises around the world, to losing that sense of safety, to now Toronto becoming Gotham City? It's a combination of many things. Well, for sure, it's the economic decline. You know, thank you, Liberals. That's part of it for sure. People are hopeless. You know, CTV reported the other day that young people cannot land a minimum wage job anymore, which is why I was told by a City of Toronto police officer that the going rate for stealing a car is $500. Imagine a young offender steals a car per night, and that is how they make their living. But it's not just because our economy is in the gutter, but it's because young offenders know that there are no consequence for what they do. I remember first-year criminal law like it was yesterday. What is the purpose behind sentencing? What is the policy? And first and foremost, it's deterrence. It's the threat of legal consequences, possibly jail. But now, there are no consequences. And that's where I'll start by taking this bill apart, that in its current form falls very short. Madam Speaker, the prevalence of young offenders in crime and gang violence is very troubling. Participation in auto theft rings is just shocking. So you'd think the Liberals would want to do something about it. But no. No sentencing reform in the Youth Criminal Justice Act. They closed a loophole, clarifying what violence is for purposes of custody, but they do not increase any sentences. I want to be clear. I do not want a kid who breaks a vending machine to be part of the correctional justice system. But for murder, for instance, custodial sentences for youth are limited to 4 years. So they do pretrial custody, get 2 for 1, and by the time they're sentenced, they're barely in custody for a year. Then they come out, much better criminals, and they terrorize the community. Another issue I'd like to flag, and this one is very special to me, because we're a democracy. We ought to respect the rule of law. But one of the big fails of Bill C-75, previous Liberal crime bill is it created a diversionary regime for offenses involving failures to comply with court orders. So for instance, offenses such as failure to appear in court or breach of an undertaking and even breach of bail may go unpunished. That's what Bill C-75 by Liberals provided for. And so it basically allows Crown attorneys to divert, to remove such offenses from the docket. And Crown attorneys, unfortunately, often do this. And Bill C-14 is completely silent on this. We had the OPP commissioner at the Justice Committee this week, and he said that this is an affront to the rule of law. And the Liberals will not correct their own mistake. Another major failure is to fix a bail condition that every police association across the country is telling them to do, and that is cash bail. I want to explain this, Madam Speaker. Right now, in almost all cases, a surety is not required to post a cash bail. They just make a promise to pay in the event that there's breach of bail conditions, but often they don't have the money and no one comes after them. And so it's meaningless. And now you have this class of professional sureties that help criminals get out on bail. If they're made to post this practice, if they're made to post cash bail, this practice will end. A surety should have some skin in the game. And finally, on bail reform, here we go again. You've already reversed the onus for a number of offenses under Bill C-48, but people are still caught and released even with those offenses. Reversing the onus is not enough. What is missing is the burden of proof, a definition to direct the courts to what is the burden that the accused must meet in order to be released. And what's very important also is that without such burden, you do not have consistent application between courts. So you have courts in different jurisdictions, in different provinces, that while they're directed to reverse the onus and place it on the accused, are not sure what is the burden that they actually have to meet. And that is something that every police force, every police association has brought up, and it's something that I sincerely hope we can address at committee. Another major problem with the bill with respect to bail reform is the ladder principle. The ladder principle basically directs the court that the accused must be released at the earliest opportunity. And the problem specifically noted by the Police Associations of Ontario this week is that the ladder principle is not eliminated in reverse onus offenses. And so what they've asked for very clearly just 2 days ago, with my friends in the room, in the chamber right now present with us, have heard the testimony from the Police Associations of Ontario saying you need to codify the fact that the ladder principle does not apply in reverse onus offenses. And finally, Speaker, C-14 is completely quiet on parole. In Canada, one is essentially automatically eligible for parole after serving a third of their sentence. And we heard from a criminal defense attorney last week in the Justice Committee that even he, a criminal defense attorney, thought that it was lunacy. That we see criminals that are sentenced to a custodial sentence and they do a third and they leave, they reoffend, they're sentenced again, and they do a third, and they leave again. And that is a practice that I think we need to put an end to. Madam Speaker, this week the Justice Committee heard from Michelle Best and Ron Best from Manitoba, parents whose daughter was killed in a car accident by an intoxicated driver. He was out on bail and breached his bail condition. There was a warrant for his arrest. And that was not the first time. He breached bail before and got out on bail again. It was one of the most moving, one of the saddest testimonies I've ever heard. We cannot bring Kelly back, but we can prevent the next atrocity. We need to fix this bill. I'm asking the government in good faith to work with us to fix Bill C-14, what is now currently a flawed bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the latter principle is addressed in this bill, and it's not to apply to reverse onus cases. But what I'd like to ask, I thought there was an interesting comment that the member made about young offenders. And he said that when they are incarcerated, somewhat of a year, they come out even more hardened criminals. I thought that was an interesting observation that he highlighted. In this bill, we consulted with a lot of stakeholders and a lot of experts in this area, and we're trying to get the balance right, Madam Speaker. And so I'd like to ask the member if he thinks that serving a sentence makes young people become even more hardened criminals, then what would be a solution that is appropriate to make sure that our young people can live a good, successful life and get out of a life of crime?
The Honourable Member for York Centre.
Madam Speaker, I had my first legal gig as a young law student at the Community Legal Clinic at the law school in London. And I dealt with a lot of young offenders. And this is what I really want to stress, is that we have to delineate, we have to separate those that got into the system by a good faith error, those that broke a vending machine, those that stole a car on the day of their prom and it was their parents' car. And we don't want to have those folks in the system. But the hardened criminals, those that commit repeat violent offenses, those that are participating in these gangs, in the auto theft rings, they need to understand the concept of deterrence, something they don't understand right now. And you accomplish deterrence by increasing the prospect of jail for serious offenses. And that was required right now, and that is something that C-14 does not do. Good answer.
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my honourable colleague from York Centre, I've long been troubled by the fact that sureties, and he raised this issue, that sureties don't have to put forward the money themselves and that people don't go after them. It happens that my stepson is also a criminal prosecutor for the province of British Columbia, and it's one of the things that is maddening is knowing that what if someone knew that if they'd gotten their mother to put up the bail money, she could lose her house because he's the one who broke the bail conditions, but she's responsible. I don't know that we can fix this in federal legislation, so I'm asking him quite honestly, is this a provincial matter of managing bail? How is it that sureties don't necessarily have to put up the money, and that we don't go after it if bail conditions are broken?
Member for York Centre.
I thank the member for the question, and I'm mindful of her concern. But we need to remember why we're here. We're here because the Liberal government finally woke up to the fact that bail needs to be fixed. And one of the challenges we have is the surety regime. And so I'm here to say, look, we can look at how other jurisdictions address this. But if a surety is going to be meaningless, if there is no risk of forfeiting that deposit or collecting on that promise, then the entire component of bail in that respect loses all relevance and meaning. But I imagine situations where parents do put up a little bit of money. It is typically not a high amount, depending on the offense, and they will do their job. They will honor their undertaking to supervise their child or to supervise their sibling and make sure that they do not breach their bail conditions. We have to make bail meaningful again.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Shore, and a very brief question. Question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, I have the honour of sitting on the Justice Committee with this member. He's referred to a defence lawyer and a police commissioner, both of whom came to the committee and said, please pass this bill. So my question to him is, will he comply with their request, move quickly, and agree to support this bill?
Honourable Member for York Centre.
I heard OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick this week agree with me that there are at least 4, 5, or 6 serious concerns that I have articulated today with this bill. And so I respect the member opposite, and I commit to working with him in good faith in trying to fix this bill at committee.